So today, let's talk about GM tractors. Specifically, let's talk about the one time GM did get into tractors, and the other time GM almost got into tractors. Now, Louis C. Durant and Henry Ford were competitors at everything. And if Ford had something, Louis C. Durant wanted it, and he wanted a bigger and better version of it. In the late 1800s, Ford was having some success with tractors. He was still a ways away from his deal with Ferguson, but that didn't make any difference. He was still selling tractors, and Louis C. Durant wanted a piece of the action. In 1919, Louis C. Durant purchased a company by the name of Samson. Now, Samson wasn't by any means a bad tractor company, but they definitely didn't have anything that made them unique or technologically more advanced than the Ford tractors. In other words, they had no edge. They produced a relatively mediocre tractor, and they got basically mediocre sales. He also didn't have much of a background when it came to agriculture, so he didn't really know what to do to make the tractor that much better, where Ford came from an agricultural background. Durant tried to use this company from 1919 until about 1921. Unfortunately, by that point, the company had lost the equivalent of about $33 billion, and he had to give up. The Samson line was completely discontinued, and the assembly line was reworked to produce vehicles for Chevrolet. GM's second attempt to get into tractors would happen around 1946. A GM engineer that was unfortunately named Willie Nutter Jr., yes, there were two Willie Nutters, who happened to be both deaf and mute, but who was a self-trained engineer and honestly an engineering genius, had designed the Nutter Chevrolet tractor in 1946. This one-off prototype specifically used a 1.5-ton Chevy pickup as its base. He specifically used already made Chevy parts from the 1946 Chevy pickups in order for GM to save money. The tractor was equipped with a 216 inline 6, and the designer called it the Chevy Nutter. Now, the brass at GM actually really liked the design and felt that the design could actually compete with the Ford 8 and 9N tractors. Now, the only reason that the brass didn't actually purchase the prototype was because it was just after World War II and all of their assembly lines were at full capacity. They couldn't shut down anything in order to start production on a tractor. But GM actually let Willie take his prototype home and use it on his family farm.